What made you finally check your husband's burner phone? The Visa statement showed $847.32 for something called Wireless Solutions Plus, a charge I'd never seen before on our joint account. I stared at the laptop screen in our kitchen, bouncing 18-month-old Lucy on my hip while 4-year-old Tyler demolished a peanut butter sandwich at the table behind me. Mark? I called toward the garage where my husband was supposedly organizing his tools. Can you come look at this credit card charge? Just a second, babe. His voice carried that distracted tone he'd been using a lot lately. The one that made me feel like I was interrupting something important, even though I was just asking about our finances. I scrolled through the rest of March's statement. Everything else looked normal: grocery stores, gas stations, Tyler's preschool, the usual hemorrhaging of money that comes with young kids. But this Wireless Solutions charge sat there like a neon sign, dated March 15th, just 2 weeks ago. When Mark finally appeared in the kitchen doorway, wiping his hands on an old rag, I noticed he seemed tense. His jaw was set in that way it got when his mother called to complain about something. What's up? He moved to the sink, turning his back to me as he washed his hands. This charge for almost $850. Wireless Solutions Plus? I've never heard of him. Mark's shoulders stiffened slightly, so slightly that 6 months ago, I might have missed it. But I've been watching him more carefully lately, cataloging all the little changes. The way he took his phone with him everywhere now, even to the bathroom. How he'd started working late 3 nights a week when his construction company had never required overtime before. The new cologne I'd found in his truck that definitely wasn't the Old Spice he'd used since we started dating 8 years ago. Oh, that, he said, grabbing a paper towel and finally turning around. I had to get a work phone. New company policy: they want us to have separate devices for job sites, so we're not using personal phones for business calls. It was a reasonable explanation. It made perfect sense. So why did something twist in my stomach when he said it? $800 for a work phone? I shifted Lucy to my other hip. That seems expensive. It's a good phone. iPhone 14. Plus the case, screen protector, first few months of service. Mark shrugged, but he wasn't quite meeting my eyes. The company's going to reimburse most of it. When? When what? When are they going to reimburse you? For just a second, Mark looked like a deer in headlights. Then he recovered, that easy smile spreading across his face, the same one that had made me fall in love with him at 26. Next month's paycheck. You know how slow corporate accounting is. He moved toward me, planting a kiss on top of Lucy's head and then on my cheek. Don't worry about it, Sarah. It's handled. But as he walked away, heading upstairs to shower before dinner, I found myself staring at that charge again. Something felt wrong. Not just the amount, but the way he'd explained it. Too smooth. Too prepared. I'd been married to Mark for 6 years, together for 8. I knew when he was lying. The question was, what was he lying about? That night, after the kids were in bed, I couldn't stop thinking about Mark's explanation. I sat on our couch, pretending to watch some Netflix show while he scrolled through his regular phone, his personal iPhone that I'd seen 1,000 times. The phone he claimed he now had to keep separate from his work device. Where's your work phone? I asked during a commercial break. Mark didn't look up from his screen. Charging in the truck. Battery died around lunchtime. You don't bring it inside? No point. Work day's over. He finally glanced at me, and I caught something flickering across his expression. Annoyance, maybe? Why all the questions about the phone, Sarah? There it was again, that tone that made me feel like I was being unreasonable for asking normal wife questions. Like I was being paranoid or controlling for wanting to understand an $847 charge on our shared credit card. I'm just curious about the new work policy. Seems like a big change. Mark's thumb stopped scrolling. It's not that big a deal. Lots of companies do this now. Which companies? Maybe I should suggest it to Jenny, her husband's in construction too. The pause was barely perceptible, but it was there. Different companies have different policies, babe. I wouldn't worry about what other people are doing. I nodded and turned back to the TV, but my mind was racing. Mark had always been chatty about work before. He'd come home with stories about his coworkers, complaints about job sites, jokes the crew had shared. When had he become so vague about the details? Over the next 3 days, I started paying closer attention. Tuesday morning, I watched from the kitchen window as Mark got into his truck. He sat there for almost 5 minutes before backing out of the driveway, his head down like he was looking at something in his lap. His phone? His work phone? Wednesday, he came home 20 minutes later than usual. When I asked about traffic, he said there'd been an accident on Route 9. I checked the traffic reports online later that night. No accidents reported on Route 9 that day. Thursday evening, while Mark was in the shower, I decided to look for this mysterious work phone. I told myself I was being ridiculous even as I slipped outside to check his truck. The console was empty except for his usual collection of receipts and loose change. The glove compartment held insurance papers and a flashlight. Nothing in the door pockets but napkins from McDonald's. But as I was closing the driver's side door, something crinkled under the passenger seat. I reached underneath and pulled out a crumpled receipt from Verizon, dated March 16th, 1 day after the Wireless Solutions charge. The receipt was for a phone case and car charger, totaling $67.43. 2 different stores. 2 different dates. And this receipt was paid for in cash, not on our credit card. I stared at the receipt in the dim light from our porch, my hands actually shaking. Why would Mark buy accessories at Verizon if he'd already gotten everything he needed from Wireless Solutions? Why would he pay cash instead of using our card like he always did? The shower was still running inside. I quickly photographed the receipt with my phone and tucked it back under the passenger seat, exactly where I'd found it. As I walked back toward the house, one terrible thought kept circling in my mind. If Mark really had nothing to hide, why did I feel like I was gathering evidence? The breaking point came on a Saturday morning in early April. Mark had gone for his usual weekend run, a new habit he'd picked up about 2 months ago, claiming he needed to get back in shape. He'd been gone for almost an hour when Tyler came running into the kitchen, tears streaming down his face. Mommy, I can't find Mr. Elephant. Mr. Elephant was Tyler's beloved stuffed animal, a gray plush toy he'd had since he was a baby. The thing was disgusting, matted fur, missing an eye, probably home to 17 different strains of bacteria, but Tyler couldn't sleep without it. Where did you last have him, honey? In Daddy's truck. Yesterday when we went to Home Depot, remember? I brought him and then I forgot. I remembered. Mark had taken Tyler with him on some errand, leaving me home with Lucy. They'd been gone for 2 hours, which seemed long for a quick hardware store run, but Mark said they'd grabbed ice cream afterward. Okay, let's go look. I scooped up Lucy and we headed outside to Mark's Ford F-150. The truck was unlocked, it always was in our driveway. Tyler immediately started digging through the back seat while I helped from the other side. I don't see him, buddy. Are you sure you brought him inside when you got home? No. He's here somewhere. Tyler's voice was climbing toward full meltdown territory. That's when I decided to check under the seats more thoroughly. I reached under the driver's seat, feeling around for the stuffed elephant, when my fingers touched something smooth and rectangular. Definitely not a toy. I pulled out a sleek black phone case. Inside was an iPhone, not the iPhone 14 Mark had mentioned, but something older. The screen was locked, but I could see several notification bubbles showing missed messages. Mommy, did you find him? Tyler was still searching frantically. Keep looking, sweetheart. Check the floor by your feet. My heart was pounding so hard I was surprised Tyler couldn't hear it. This had to be the work phone. But why hide it under the seat? Why not leave it in the console or cup holder like a normal person? I pressed the home button and the lock screen lit up. The wallpaper made my blood turn to ice water. It was a photo of Mark, shirtless, grinning at the camera in a way that was definitely not appropriate for work communications. The notification preview showed 3 unread messages from someone named E. Redhart with timestamps from this morning. Missing you already, 7:23 a.m. Can't wait for next weekend, 7:24 a.m. Delete these after you read them, 7:31 a.m. Next weekend. Mark had told me he was going on a guys fishing trip next weekend with his buddy Dave from work. He'd seemed excited about it, said they'd been planning it for months. Found him. Tyler's triumphant shout made me jump. He'd discovered Mr. Elephant wedged between the back seat and the door. He was hiding. That's great, baby. My voice sounded strange, like it was coming from underwater. I quickly slid the phone back under the driver's seat, making sure it was positioned exactly where I'd found it. As we walked back to the house, Tyler chattering happily about his rescued elephant, my mind was reeling. E with a heart emoji. Someone who was apparently going to see my husband next weekend while I thought he was fishing with Dave. Someone who was texting him at 7:23 a.m. on a Saturday morning, which meant Mark had been checking that phone either before his run or during it. I thought about all those new running routes he'd been exploring lately. All those times he came back from his workouts seeming energized in a way that had nothing to do with endorphins. Inside the house, I put Lucy in her high chair and started making lunch with shaking hands. 20 minutes later, Mark jogged up the driveway, barely breathing hard for someone who'd supposedly been running for over an hour. Good run? I asked as he stretched against the porch railing. The best, he said, and his smile looked different now. Secretive. Really cleared my head. I'll bet it did. That afternoon, while Mark showered off his run, I sat on our bedroom floor pretending to fold laundry while my mind spiraled through possibilities. E with a heart emoji. Someone he was planning to see next weekend. Someone who wanted him to delete their messages. The rational part of my brain kept trying to minimize it. Maybe E was a female coworker. Maybe the messages were innocent and I was reading too much into them. Maybe the shirtless photo was just Mark being his usual goofy self. But the growing knot in my stomach knew better. I waited until Monday morning, after Mark left for work and I dropped Tyler at preschool. Lucy was down for her morning nap, giving me a precious window of uninterrupted time. I'd been thinking about this for 2 days straight, weighing my options, talking myself in and out of what I was about to do. I called Wireless Solutions Plus. Thank you for calling Wireless Solutions, this is Jennifer, how can I help you? Hi, I'm calling about a recent purchase my husband made. There's a charge on our credit card from March 15th for $847.32, and I need to understand what exactly was purchased. I can help with that. Can you provide me with a credit card number? I rattled off our Visa digits, my hands sweating as I gripped the phone. Okay, I see that transaction. It was for an iPhone 13, a premium leather case, wireless charging pad, and 6 months of our premium unlimited plan. The phone was activated that same day. iPhone 13, not 14. But that was a minor detail compared to what came next. Can you tell me what number was assigned to that phone? I'm sorry, I can't give out that information unless you're an authorized user on the account. My heart sank. The account is under my husband's name? Mark Sullivan? Actually, no. This account is registered to an Emma Chen. The credit card on file is authorized by Mark Sullivan, but she's the primary account holder. Emma Chen. The room started spinning. I gripped the edge of our kitchen counter, staring out at our backyard where Tyler's swing set sat motionless in the morning sun. Emma Chen was my sister. Emma. E with a heart emoji. My 28-year-old sister who lived 40 minutes away in Millbrook. My sister who was engaged to David, a sweet accountant she'd been with for 3 years. My sister who came to our house for Sunday dinners and brought expensive wine she couldn't really afford. My sister who always hugged Mark a little too long when she arrived and left. My sister who had complimented Mark's new cologne at Easter dinner 3 weeks ago, running her fingers along his arm as she said it smelled really sexy. Ma'am? Are you still there? Yes, I whispered. Sorry, I'm here. Is there anything else I can help you with today? No. Thank you. I hung up and immediately ran to the bathroom, barely making it before I threw up everything I'd eaten for breakfast. Afterward, I sat on the cold tile floor, my back against the bathtub, trying to process what I'd just learned. Mark wasn't having an affair with some random woman. He was having an affair with Emma. My baby sister. The maid of honor at our wedding. The first person I'd called when I found out I was pregnant with Tyler, screaming with excitement into the phone. The sister who had held my hand during my difficult labor with Lucy, who had brought us dinner every night for a week afterward, who had looked me in the eye and told me what an amazing mother I was. All those recent Sunday dinners took on a new, sickening context. The way Emma and Mark had started arriving and leaving at different times. How they never seemed to interact much when they were both there, almost like they were deliberately avoiding each other. The way Emma had been asking more questions about Mark's work schedule lately. About our marriage. About whether I was happy. I thought she was being a concerned sister. She was gathering intelligence. That night, I couldn't eat dinner. I pushed food around my plate while Mark told some story about a difficult client, watching his mouth move and wondering how many lies had come out of it over the past few months. Every time he smiled at me, every casual love you too when I said it first, every kiss goodnight, how much of our life together had become an elaborate performance. You feeling okay, babe? Mark reached across the table to feel my forehead. You look pale. The concern in his voice sounded so genuine. If I didn't know what I knew, I would have melted into that touch, grateful for a husband who noticed when something was wrong. Just tired, I managed. Lucy was fussy during her nap. Lucy had actually slept like an angel. I was the one who had spent 2 hours sitting in her nursery, staring at the walls while my world crumbled around me. After we put the kids to bed, I excused myself to take a bath. Really, I needed space to think, to plan my next move. The phone was still in Mark's truck. I'd checked from our bedroom window when he got home from work. Now I needed to figure out how to get another look at it. The opportunity came sooner than expected. Around 9 p.m., Mark's regular phone rang. Hey Dave, he answered, and my stomach clenched. Yeah, about this weekend. I crept closer to the top of the stairs, straining to hear. Might have to push it back a week. Something came up with work. A pause. No, nothing serious, just scheduling conflicts. He talked for another few minutes about rescheduling their fishing trip. The fishing trip that was apparently never happening, at least not this weekend. When he hung up, he called toward the bathroom. Sarah? Dave had to postpone our trip. Looks like I'll be around this weekend after all. That's too bad, I called back, amazed at how normal my voice sounded. I know you were looking forward to it. But Mark didn't sound disappointed. If anything, there was excitement in his voice, barely contained energy thrumming underneath his words. 20 minutes later, he announced he was going to run to the gas station for coffee creamer for tomorrow morning. Such a thoughtful husband, making sure I had what I needed for my morning routine. I'll just be 10 minutes, he said, grabbing his keys. The second his truck pulled out of our driveway, I threw on a robe and ran outside. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely reach under the driver's seat, but I managed to grab the phone. This time, I was ready. I'd spent the last hour Googling how to bypass iPhone lock screens, how to access messages without the passcode. Most of it required technical skills I didn't have, but there was one thing I could try. I held down the home button and Siri activated. Read my messages, I said quietly. You have 14 unread messages. Would you like me to read them? Yes. What followed was like listening to my own execution. Messages from Emma, sent throughout the day. Asterisk, can't stop thinking about yesterday afternoon. The way you touched me, asterisk. Asterisk, David's working late again tonight. Wish you could come over. Asterisk. Asterisk, I hate this sneaking around. When are we going to tell her? Asterisk. Asterisk, just 2 more months and we can be together for real. I can't wait to be Lucy and Tyler's stepmom. Asterisk. And Mark's responses. Asterisk, yesterday was incredible. You're incredible. Asterisk. Asterisk, soon, baby. I'm working on the custody angle. My lawyer thinks we have a strong case since I'm the primary earner. Asterisk. Asterisk, Sarah's been asking questions about the phone. We need to be more careful. Asterisk. Asterisk, I love you, M. This is all going to work out. Asterisk. I almost dropped the phone. Custody angle. They weren't just planning to run off together, they were planning to take my children. The most recent exchange was from this afternoon. Emma, asterisk, I'm so nervous about this weekend. What if she finds out? Asterisk. Mark, asterisk, she won't. Sarah doesn't suspect anything. She's too busy with the kids to pay attention. Asterisk. Emma, asterisk, I feel terrible about lying to her. Asterisk. Mark, asterisk, it won't be for much longer. Once the divorce is final and I have custody, we can all be a real family. Asterisk. Emma, asterisk, I know. She's my sister. Asterisk. Mark, asterisk, and you'll still be sisters. Just think how much happier Tyler and Lucy will be with a mother who actually wants to do things besides change diapers and watch Disney movies. Asterisk. I heard Mark's truck turning into our driveway and quickly put the phone back exactly where I'd found it. By the time he walked through the front door with his gas station coffee creamer, I was back upstairs in bed, pretending to read a book. All set for tomorrow, he said cheerfully, leaning down to kiss my cheek. Great, I whispered. But as I lay there in the dark next to my husband, listening to him breathe, feeling the warmth of his body next to mine, only one thought kept cycling through my mind. They had no idea that I knew everything. And I was going to make them pay for every single lie. The next morning, I woke up with a clarity I hadn't felt in months. While Mark showered, singing off-key like he didn't have a care in the world, I sat at my laptop researching divorce attorneys in our area. I bookmarked 3 different law firms, making sure to clear my browser history afterward. At breakfast, Mark was unusually affectionate. He kept touching my shoulder as he moved around the kitchen, kissing the top of my head while I fed Lucy her oatmeal. The man who was planning to steal my children and paint me as an inadequate mother was putting on quite the loving husband performance. What do you want to do this weekend? He asked, buttering his toast. Since the fishing trip got cancelled, we could do something as a family. I almost laughed at the audacity. Actually, I was thinking of visiting Emma. We haven't had sister time in a while. Mark's hand froze halfway to his mouth. For just a second, pure panic flashed across his face before he recovered. Oh, that's nice. When were you thinking? Maybe tomorrow afternoon? Emma mentioned she's been stressed about wedding planning. I thought I could help her look at venues or something. Another lie, but 2 could play this game. I watched Mark's jaw tighten as he processed this information. Was he trying to figure out how to warn Emma? Or was he panicking about their weekend plans getting disrupted? Didn't she just look at that place in Hudson last month? Mark asked carefully. I'd never mentioned Emma looking at venues in Hudson. Emma had never mentioned it either. The only way Mark would know that detail is if Emma had told him directly. How do you know about Hudson? I kept my voice light, curious rather than accusatory. Mark's eyes darted away from mine. I think, didn't she mention it at Easter dinner? When we were talking about wedding stuff? Maybe. I smiled and took a sip of coffee. My memory's terrible these days. Mom brain, you know? Asterisk Sarah doesn't suspect anything. She's too busy with the kids to pay attention. Asterisk Mark's words from yesterday echoed in my head. Let him keep thinking I was just a distracted mother, too overwhelmed to notice what was happening right under my nose. After Mark left for work, I called Emma. Sarah. Hi. Her voice sounded strained, almost guilty. What's up? I was hoping to come visit tomorrow afternoon. I feel like we haven't talked in forever. The pause was telling. Tomorrow? Saturday afternoon? Is that bad timing? I know you're probably busy with wedding stuff. No, it's just. Emma was clearly scrambling. David and I were going to look at flowers. For the wedding. It might take all day. Another lie. David was Emma's fiancé, the sweet accountant who had no idea his future wife was planning to become stepmother to someone else's children. What about Sunday then? I pressed. Sunday works. Sunday's perfect. Come over around 2? After I hung up, I sat staring at my phone. Emma had just cleared her entire Saturday schedule. The same Saturday that Mark was supposedly free because of his cancelled fishing trip. The same Saturday he'd seemed excited about despite his alleged disappointment. I spent the rest of Friday taking screenshots. I'd figured out that Siri would read messages without unlocking the phone, which meant I could access their conversations whenever Mark left the house. Each trip to the grocery store, each evening run, each time he went to grab something from the truck became an opportunity to document their betrayal. By evening, I had captured dozens of messages spanning back weeks. The affair had been going on since February, starting just after Emma got engaged to David. The wedding stress had apparently driven her straight into my husband's arms, and Mark had been more than willing to comfort her. Some messages were purely sexual, graphic descriptions of what they wanted to do to each other that made me physically ill. Others were logistical, coordinating when and where they could meet, always careful to avoid times when I might notice Mark's absence. But the worst ones were about the future they were planning. Emma had been researching apartments in North Carolina, near where Mark's cousin lived. They discussed how to approach the custody battle, with Mark's lawyer apparently confident that his income and work stability would favor him over a stay-at-home mother with no recent job history. The kids love me already, Emma had texted. Asterisk Tyler always asks when Aunt Emma is coming over. It'll be an easy transition. Asterisk. Lucy won't even remember Sarah was her first mom if we do this right, Mark had replied. Asterisk, she's still so young. Asterisk. That message broke something inside me. They weren't just stealing my husband and destroying my marriage. They were planning to erase me from my own children's lives. But as I sat there reading their plans to dismantle my existence, I realized something. They'd made a crucial mistake. They'd documented everything. Every lie, every manipulation, every detail of their affair and their custody strategy. It was all right there in digital black and white. Mark thought he was being clever with his secret phone, but he'd actually created a complete record of his betrayal. And now I had copies of all of it. Saturday morning arrived with Mark practically vibrating with nervous energy. He kept checking his regular phone, then catching himself and putting it down too quickly. Around 10 a.m., he announced he was going to wash his truck, something he usually did maybe twice a year. Want help? I offered, bouncing Lucy on my hip. No, I've got it. You relax. He was already heading for the door. Might take a while. Really want to get it detailed. I watched from the kitchen window as he spent 20 minutes actually washing the truck, then another 10 sitting in the driver's seat with his head down. Checking messages, no doubt. Confirming plans with my sister. At 11:47 a.m., he came back inside looking like a man trying very hard to appear casual. I'm going to run some errands, he announced. Home Depot, maybe stop by Dave's place to drop off those tools I borrowed. What tools? Mark paused at the front door. The socket wrench set. Remember? I didn't remember any borrowed tools, and neither did Mark, apparently, because he couldn't seem to recall any other details when I asked. He left without kissing me goodbye, another first in our 8 years together. The moment his truck disappeared around the corner, I called Dave's wife, Michelle. Hey Sarah. What's up? Hi Michelle, sorry to bother you. Mark said he might stop by to return some tools to Dave, but I realized I need him to grab milk on the way home. Is he there yet? Dave's at his mom's house helping her with some plumbing issue, Michelle said. He's been there since 9 this morning. Are you sure Mark said he was coming here? I must have misheard. Thanks anyway. So Mark wasn't at Dave's house. Mark wasn't running errands at Home Depot. Mark was somewhere with Emma, doing God knows what while I stayed home with our children like the clueless wife he thought I was. I spent the afternoon taking Tyler to the playground, pretending everything was normal while my mind raced with plans. By the time Mark came home at 4:30 p.m., 3.5 hours to run errands, I had made several important decisions. How was Dave? I asked sweetly as Mark walked through the door. Dave? You said you were dropping off tools. Oh, right. He wasn't there. I'll catch him next week. Mark avoided my eyes, heading straight upstairs. I'm going to shower. While the water ran, I grabbed his secret phone from the truck one more time. The recent messages made me want to throw the device against the garage wall. Emma, asterisk, that was amazing. I can still taste you. Asterisk. Mark, asterisk, your place next Saturday? David working again? Asterisk. Emma, asterisk, he's visiting his parents. We'll have the whole day. Asterisk. Mark, asterisk, can't wait to wake up next to you every morning. Asterisk. Emma, asterisk, soon. I almost slipped and called you honey in front of Sarah last week. Asterisk. Mark, asterisk, lol, she's so oblivious. Yesterday she asked about my work phone again. I swear she has no idea what's right in front of her face. Asterisk. The mockery in that last message was what finally crystallized my resolve. They weren't just betraying me, they were laughing about how stupid they thought I was. How easy it was to fool the boring suburban mom who was too distracted by diapers and Disney movies to notice her whole life was being stolen from under her nose. That evening, after the kids were asleep, I made my first real move. I created a new email account using a public computer at the library, truthaboutamandmark@gmail.com. Then I carefully composed a message to David, Emma's unsuspecting fiancé, attaching screenshots of the most damning conversations between his future wife and my husband. But I didn't send it. Not yet. First, I needed to get those children away from Mark. The next morning was Sunday, which meant Emma was coming for our weekly family dinner. I'd completely forgotten about the standing invitation until Mark mentioned it over breakfast, and I watched his face carefully as he spoke. Should I text Em and tell her not to come today? Since you're planning to see her this afternoon anyway? His voice was casual, but there was something hopeful underneath it. No, let her come. I actually want to cancel this afternoon. Lucy's been fussy, and I think she might be getting sick. I bounced our daughter on my knee, noting how Mark's shoulders sagged slightly with relief. Good call. Emma will understand. What Mark didn't know was that I'd already texted Emma at 6 a.m., asking her to come early, around 11 a.m. instead of the usual 2 p.m. I'd claimed I wanted help preparing a big meal, sister bonding time in the kitchen. She'd agreed immediately, probably thrilled at the excuse to see Mark sooner. At 10:45 a.m., I was stationed at the kitchen window when Emma's silver Honda pulled into our driveway. I watched my sister check her reflection in the rearview mirror, applying fresh lip gloss before getting out of the car. She was wearing a new dress I'd never seen, a blue sundress that hugged her figure and showed more cleavage than she usually displayed at family gatherings. Emma's here. I called upstairs to Mark, who was supposedly fixing a loose towel rack in our bathroom. The speed at which he appeared at the top of the stairs was telling. His hair was freshly combed, and unless I was imagining things, he was wearing the cologne I'd smelled in his truck months ago. Hey Em, Mark said as my sister walked through our front door, and I caught the split second of eye contact between them. The kind of look that lasted just a beat too long before they both remembered I was watching. Hi Mark. Emma's voice was softer than usual, almost breathless. Then she turned to me with what I now recognized as a completely fake smile. Sarah. You look tired. Are you feeling okay? You look tired, such a caring sister, pointing out my flaws while she planned to steal my life. Just the usual mom exhaustion. Thanks for coming early, I really wanted to try that new casserole recipe, and you know how hopeless I am with timing multiple dishes. It was all lies, of course. I'd ordered pizza for lunch, which would be delivered in 20 minutes. But Emma didn't know that. For the next hour, I played the perfect oblivious wife and sister. I asked Emma about wedding planning while watching her and Mark navigate around each other in our kitchen with practiced familiarity. When she reached for a wine glass from the high cabinet, Mark was already there to help her, his hand briefly touching her waist. When he moved to grab something from the refrigerator, Emma stepped aside in a way that let him brush against her. They had a choreography, these two. A rhythm born from secret meetings and stolen moments in my own home. David's parents are so excited about the wedding, Emma said, accepting a glass of the expensive Pinot Grigio she'd brought, wine that was probably meant for her romantic afternoon with my husband. His mom wants to invite half of Pittsburgh. That's nice, I said, thinking about the email I drafted to David, still sitting in my unsent folder. David's such a good guy. You're lucky to have found someone so honest and loyal. Emma's wine glass paused halfway to her lips. Yeah. He's wonderful. Mark suddenly became very interested in loading our dishwasher, his back to both of us. The pizza arrived at exactly noon, and I watched Mark's confusion as I paid the delivery driver. I thought we were making that casserole? Emma asked. Change of plans. I realized I was missing half the ingredients. I set the boxes on our kitchen table. Sometimes it's easier to just order something, you know? I've been feeling so scatterbrained lately. Sarah's so oblivious, let them think I was just a disorganized housewife who couldn't even manage a simple meal. During lunch, Tyler entertained us with a long story about his preschool friend's pet hamster, and I noticed how Emma kept glancing at Mark, how she laughed a little too hard at his jokes, how she complimented the renovation work he'd done on our kitchen last fall. Mark's so handy, she said, running her fingers along the edge of the new countertop. David can barely change a light bulb. Poor David. His biggest crime was being boring compared to his fiancé's secret lover. After we finished eating, Emma offered to help with dishes while Mark took the kids outside to play on the swing set. Through the kitchen window, I could see him pushing Lucy in her baby swing while Tyler climbed on his jungle gym, and for a moment, my heart cracked thinking about their plan to take this away from me. Sarah, Emma said quietly, standing beside me at the sink, can I ask you something personal? Here it comes, I thought. More intelligence gathering. Are you and Mark, are you happy? Really happy? I turned to look at my sister, my baby sister who I'd helped raise after our parents divorced, who I'd taught to drive, who'd been my maid of honor and had promised to always have my back. Why would you ask that? Emma's cheeks flushed pink. I don't know. You both seem distant lately. At Easter, you barely talk to each other. Marriage isn't always a fairy tale, Em. We have 2 young kids and a mortgage and all the normal stresses. But we're fine. But are you fulfilled? As a person, I mean. Don't you want more than just this? She gestured around our kitchen, our home, our life. The condescension in her voice was breathtaking. This house, this life she was so eager to dismiss, she was actively planning to take it all for herself. I love my life, I said simply. I love being a mother. I love my husband. I love our boring suburban existence that apparently looks so unfulfilling from the outside. Emma backpedaled quickly. I didn't mean it like that. I just meant, don't you miss working? Having your own identity outside of being Mark's wife and the kids' mom? Is that what people say? That I don't have my own identity? No. God, no. Emma was flustered now, probably realizing she'd pushed too hard. I worry about you sometimes. You gave up so much when you had Tyler. You gave up so much, but apparently not enough, since Emma was planning to take what little I had left. Outside, Mark was teaching Tyler how to properly kick a soccer ball, his hands guiding our son's small feet. They were both laughing, and Tyler was looking up at his daddy with pure adoration. Emma followed my gaze. Mark's such a good father. The best, I agreed. Tyler and Lucy are so lucky to have him. What I didn't say, and you're planning to convince a judge that he'd be a better primary parent than me. As if summoned by our conversation, Mark appeared at the sliding door. Tyler wants to show Aunt Emma his new trick on the monkey bars. Emma practically glowed. I'd love to see it. I watched from the kitchen window as my sister and my husband stood side by side in our backyard, watching my son play. Emma said something that made Mark laugh, and he bumped her shoulder with his in a gesture that looked casual but lasted too long. When Tyler successfully crossed all the monkey bars, Emma clapped and Mark scooped him up in a celebratory hug, and for a moment, they looked like the perfect little family. The family they were planning to become once they erased me from the picture. That's when I made my final decision about the timeline. I was done waiting. That evening, after Emma left with promises to do this more often and Mark retreated to watch Sunday Night Football, I sat in our bedroom with my laptop, finally ready to execute the plan I'd been forming for weeks. But first, I needed to secure my escape route. I'd been researching this for days: how to relocate with children during a divorce, what constituted legal kidnapping versus protective relocation. The laws were murky, but one thing was clear: if I could prove Mark was an unfit parent or that staying put would harm the children, I had options. I started with my sister Jenny in Portland. 3 years older than me, divorced herself, with a spare bedroom and a fierce protective streak that had gotten her in trouble since we were kids. Sarah? It's almost 11 p.m. there, are you okay? Jenny's voice was thick with sleep, but she snapped to attention when I started talking. I need to ask you something, and I need you not to ask questions yet. If I needed to bring Tyler and Lucy to stay with you for a while, like, potentially for months, would that be possible? The silence stretched for 10 seconds. What did that bastard do? Jen. I'm serious, Sarah. I've never liked how he talks to you. Remember at Christmas when you asked him to help with dishes and he said housework was your department in front of everyone? I'd forgotten about that. Mark had laughed it off as a joke when I confronted him later, said I was being too sensitive. It's bigger than that. Much bigger. But I can't explain everything over the phone. Okay. Yes, absolutely yes. You and the kids can stay here as long as you need. I'll clear out my office tomorrow and set up bunk beds. When are we talking? Soon. Maybe very soon. After I hung up, I opened a new browser tab and searched for red-eye flights from Albany to Portland. The earliest I could book was Tuesday night, 2 days away. Expensive, especially for 3 tickets on short notice, but I'd been secretly moving money from our joint savings to a personal account I'd opened at a different bank. Small amounts over several weeks, disguised as grocery runs and gas purchases. Mark monitored our finances, but he'd never been detail-oriented about tracking every $20 or $40 withdrawal. Next, I called the law firm I'd researched, Sullivan & Associates, which felt like cosmic irony given my married name. I left a voicemail requesting an emergency consultation for Monday morning, family law matter involving custody and relocation. By the time Mark came upstairs, I was under the covers pretending to read. Emma seemed good today, he said, changing into his pajama pants. She's been stressed about the wedding, but she looked happier. I bet she did. Spending 3 hours fantasizing about her future life with my husband and children probably improved her mood considerably. She asked me some weird questions while you were outside with the kids. Mark's hand froze on his dresser drawer. What kind of questions? About our marriage. Whether I was happy, whether I felt fulfilled. I closed my book and looked at him directly. Do you think I seem unhappy? No, of course not. But Mark wouldn't meet my eyes. Emma's probably just, wedding nerves make people examine all the relationships around them. She's overthinking everything. Maybe. I turned off my bedside lamp. It just felt like she was fishing for something specific. In the darkness, I could hear Mark's breathing change slightly. He was thinking, probably calculating whether he needed to warn Emma to be more subtle. I'm sure she's just being a concerned sister, he said finally. The next morning, Mark left for work at his usual time, but not before spending 15 minutes in his truck checking his route for the day. I watched him through the curtains, head down, typing rapidly on something in his lap. At 9:30 a.m., after dropping Tyler at preschool, I drove to a FedEx office 3 towns over. I prepared 5 manila envelopes the night before, each containing printed copies of the most damning text message screenshots. The first envelope went to David Chen at his accounting firm downtown. Inside was a brief note: David, I'm sorry you have to find out this way, but you deserve to know the truth before you marry her. These messages span the last 6 weeks. I have more if you need them. A concerned friend. Asterisk. The second envelope was addressed to Hartwell Construction, Mark's employer. His boss, Jim Hartwell, was a devout Catholic who'd fired employees for lesser moral failings. The note read, Jim, Mark Sullivan has been conducting an extramarital affair using company time and potentially company resources. Thought you should be aware before it reflects poorly on Hartwell Construction's reputation. Asterisk. The third envelope went to Mark's parents in Syracuse, conservative, religious people who'd always treated me like the daughter they never had. They'd be devastated, but they needed to know what kind of man their son had become. The fourth went to my divorce attorney, along with my retainer check and a note requesting immediate filing. The fifth envelope was the most important. It was addressed to Emma's apartment, but I wasn't mailing it. I was hand-delivering it tomorrow morning, after she got home from whatever romantic evening she had planned with my husband. But this envelope contained something extra, a printed lease agreement for a studio apartment in Portland, backdated to last week, with Jenny listed as my emergency contact. If anyone questioned my relocation, I'd claim I'd been planning to visit family for Tyler's spring break and decided to stay longer while exploring job opportunities. By Wednesday morning, everyone would know the truth. By Wednesday evening, the kids and I would be on a plane to Oregon. But Mark and Emma had no idea their carefully constructed lie was about to detonate. I paid for overnight delivery on all the business envelopes and drove home humming along to the radio for the first time in months. Tonight was Mark's bowling league, every Monday night for 3 years, supposedly. I'd never questioned it because Dave was allegedly on the same team. Except now I knew better. Tonight, while Mark was with Emma, I'd be packing everything that mattered into suitcases small enough to check his airline baggage. Tomorrow, I'd withdraw the maximum daily limit from our joint accounts. By Tuesday evening, we'd be gone. And Mark would finally learn what it felt like to have his whole world disappear without warning. Monday evening arrived with Mark practically bouncing off the walls with nervous energy. He kept checking his regular phone, then remembering himself and setting it down too casually. At 6:15 p.m., he grabbed his bowling bag from the hall closet, a bag that looked suspiciously dust-free for equipment that supposedly got used every week. League night, he announced, kissing my cheek with what I now recognized as guilt-fueled enthusiasm. Probably won't be back until late. You know how the guys get when we're winning. Which guys? I asked, bouncing Lucy on my hip. Besides Dave? Mark paused at the front door. What do you mean? I was just curious about your teammates. You never really talk about them. Oh, there's Mike from the electrical crew, and Tom. Tom Jenkins from accounting. The name sounded made up, rolled off his tongue too smoothly. Just work guys, you know. After his truck disappeared around the corner, I called Michelle again. Hey, is Dave at bowling tonight? Mark forgot his lucky socks and I was going to drop them off. Michelle laughed. Dave's bowling league was canceled 3 weeks ago when the alley started those renovations. He's been using Monday nights to catch up on yard work. Want me to have him call Mark? No, that's okay. I must have misunderstood. So Mark had been lying about bowling for at least 3 weeks. 3 Monday nights when he'd come home smelling faintly of perfume I'd convinced myself was just lingering scents from the alley's cleaning supplies. While Tyler played with his Legos and Lucy napped in her bouncer, I packed methodically. 3 suitcases hidden in the back of my closet, filled with essentials, birth certificates, social security cards, medical records, a week's worth of clothes for each of us, Tyler's most beloved toys, and $3,000 in cash I'd been accumulating for 2 weeks. At 9:47 p.m., my phone buzzed with a text from Emma, can't sleep. Keep thinking about what we talked about yesterday. Want to grab coffee tomorrow morning? Just us sisters? The audacity was breathtaking. While she was presumably naked in bed with my husband, she was texting me about sisterly bonding time. I typed back, can't tomorrow, Lucy has her pediatrician appointment. Rain check? Her response came back immediately, of course. Hope everything's okay with Lucy. Hope everything's okay with Lucy. The fake concern from someone planning to become my daughter's replacement mother made my hands shake with rage. Mark came home at 11:23 p.m., claiming the team had gone out for celebratory beers after crushing the competition. He was showered and cologne-free, but there were faint red marks on his neck that he tried to cover with his shirt collar. How'd you bowl? I asked from bed, not looking up from my book. Great night. Threw a 180 in the second game. Mark was already heading for the bathroom. I'm exhausted though. Gonna crash hard. While he brushed his teeth, I quickly grabbed his secret phone from the truck one last time. The most recent messages made me want to scream. Emma, I can still feel you inside me. My whole body is humming. Mark, next Monday I'm keeping you in bed all night. No more rushing. Emma, I told Sarah I wanted coffee tomorrow. Think she suspects anything? Mark, no way. She bought the bowling story completely. We're good, baby. Emma, I can't wait until we don't have to sneak around anymore. I'm tired of pretending to care about her boring mom stories. Mark, just a few more weeks. My lawyer says April is the perfect time to file, gives us the summer to get custody sorted before Tyler starts kindergarten. Kindergarten. They were planning to uproot Tyler right before he started school, probably move him to some district near their new apartment in North Carolina. But as I read their messages, I noticed something that made my blood freeze. Mark had mentioned a lawyer. Not just any lawyer, my lawyer. The one I'd been consulting with for 2 weeks. I scrolled up frantically and found the detail that shattered my remaining composure. Patterson says the key is documenting Sarah's instability. The phone calls to her sister, the paranoid questions about my work schedule, we're building a solid case for primary custody. Patterson. As in James Patterson from Sullivan and Associates. The same firm where I had an appointment scheduled for tomorrow morning. Mark's lawyer and my lawyer worked for the same firm. My husband had been planning this divorce for months, not weeks. He'd already consulted with the best family law attorneys in the area, which meant I couldn't hire any of them due to conflict of interest rules. He'd systematically cut off my access to quality legal representation while gathering evidence to paint me as an unfit mother. Every question I'd asked about his work phone, every call to Michelle about Dave's whereabouts, every moment of reasonable suspicion, it was all being documented as proof of my paranoid instability. Mark had played this perfectly. In any divorce proceeding, I'd look like the suspicious, paranoid wife who'd been stalking her husband, while he'd appear to be the rational parent trying to protect his children from their mother's increasingly erratic behavior. Except for one thing Mark didn't know, I had their entire digital confession. When he finally came to bed, I was already pretending to sleep. But my mind was racing, recalculating everything. Tuesday night's flight to Portland wasn't just an escape plan anymore, it was my only chance to level the playing field before Mark's legal strategy destroyed me completely. I had less than 18 hours to disappear with my children before my husband realized I'd been several steps ahead of him all along. Tuesday morning arrived gray and drizzling, matching my mood as I went through the motions of our normal routine. Mark seemed relaxed at breakfast, probably relieved that his bowling night had gone off without a hitch. He even offered to drop Tyler at preschool on his way to work, an unusual gesture that I now recognized as guilt management. That's sweet of you, I said, buckling Lucy into her high chair. I could use the extra time to get some things done around here. What I really needed was time to execute the final phase of my plan without Tyler asking questions about the suitcases. At 8:47 a.m., Mark's truck pulled out of our driveway with Tyler chattering excitedly in the passenger seat about show and tell day. I watched them disappear around the corner, my heart clenching at how normal and loving Mark looked with our son. For a moment, doubt crept in. Was I really going to take Tyler and Lucy away from their father over text messages and suspicious behavior? Then I remembered. Patterson says the key is documenting Sarah's instability. This wasn't just about an affair anymore. Mark was systematically building a legal case to take my children away permanently. At 9:15 a.m., I loaded Lucy into her car seat and drove to the bank. I withdrew $2,500 from our joint checking account, not enough to trigger any automatic alerts, but enough to cover our immediate expenses in Portland. The teller, Mrs. Chen from our neighborhood, made pleasant small talk about Lucy's cute outfit while processing the transaction. Big shopping trip planned, she asked with a smile. Something like that, I replied, thinking about the bitter irony that she shared a last name with my sister. Next stop was Emma's apartment complex in Millbrook. I timed this carefully. Emma worked at a marketing firm downtown and never left before 10 a.m. Her silver Honda was still in the parking lot when I pulled up at 9:43 a.m. I sat in my car for 5 minutes, staring at the manila envelope on my passenger seat. Inside were printed copies of every message between her and Mark, along with a single sheet of paper with 3 sentences. I know everything. The affair, the custody plan, all of it. You have 24 hours to tell David yourself before I do it for you. Part of me wanted to ring her doorbell, to see the look on Emma's face when she realized her careful deception had crumbled. But confronting her would only give her time to warn Mark, to coordinate their damage control strategy. Better to let her discover the truth when she got home tonight, after I was already gone. I slipped the envelope under her apartment door at exactly 9:51 a.m. and drove away. By 11 a.m., I was back home packing the last of our essentials. Lucy played contentedly in her bouncer while I folded tiny clothes and selected which of Tyler's stuffed animals were critical enough to justify precious luggage space. Mr. Elephant was definitely making the trip. At 11:23 a.m., my phone rang. Unknown number. Mrs. Sullivan? This is James Patterson from Sullivan and Associates. I'm calling about your appointment scheduled for this afternoon. My blood turned to ice. Mark's lawyer was calling me directly. Yes? I managed. I'm afraid we're going to need to reschedule. A conflict has come to my attention regarding your case. I'd recommend seeking representation elsewhere. The conflict being that he was already representing my husband in a plan to destroy me. I understand, I said quietly. I'm truly sorry for the inconvenience. Family law situations can be complicated. After he hung up, I sat on my bedroom floor surrounded by half-packed suitcases, the full scope of Mark's strategy finally clear. He hadn't just been planning to divorce me, he'd been systematically isolating me from legal resources while building his case for months. But what Mark didn't know was that David Chen had received his envelope 2 hours ago. At 11:47 a.m., my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This is David. We need to talk. Can you meet me at Riverside Park at noon? Come alone. I stared at the message, my heart hammering. Emma's fiancé wanted to meet, which meant he'd opened the envelope and seen the screenshots. This wasn't part of my plan. I was supposed to be finishing my packing, picking up Tyler from preschool, getting ready for our evening flight. But David was the one innocent person in this mess besides my children. He deserved answers. I loaded Lucy back into her car seat and drove to Riverside Park, wondering if I was about to make the biggest mistake of my carefully orchestrated escape plan. David was sitting on a bench near the playground when I arrived, still wearing his work clothes and navy suit that looked expensive but conservative, exactly what I'd expect from an accountant. He stood when he saw me approaching with Lucy's stroller, and I could see he'd been crying. Sarah. His voice was hoarse. Thank you for coming. David, I'm so sorry you had to find out this way. I didn't know how else to. How long have you known? He sat back down heavily, running his hands through his hair. About Emma and Mark. I found the phone last week. But I think it's been going on since February. David nodded slowly. That makes sense. She's been different since she got back from that weekend trip to see you guys. More distant, secretive about her phone. He looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes. I actually thought she was planning some elaborate surprise for our wedding. God, I'm such an idiot. You're not an idiot. They've been very careful. Have they? David laughed bitterly, pulling out his own phone. Because Emma left 37 voicemails on my phone this morning after I texted you. 37, Sarah. She's been calling every 5 minutes since 9 a.m. My stomach dropped. If Emma was in full panic mode, that meant she'd probably already warned Mark. My careful timeline was collapsing. What did the messages say? Everything you'd expect. It's not what it looks like, I can explain, please don't do anything rash. David's voice was getting harder. The last one was interesting though. She said I needed to be careful about believing Sarah's version of events because you've been struggling with paranoid thoughts lately. The coordination was breathtaking. Even in crisis mode, they were sticking to their strategy of painting me as unstable. David, there's something else you need to know. I pulled out my phone and showed him the screenshots I'd saved of their custody discussions. They're not just having an affair. They're planning to take my children. I watched his face change as he read Mark's messages about documenting my instability, about Emma becoming Tyler and Lucy's stepmother, about their lawyer's competence in winning a custody battle. Jesus Christ, David whispered. She talked about your kids all the time. How much she loved them, how natural she was with them. I thought it meant she'd be a good mother to our children someday. I'm taking Tyler and Lucy to my sister's in Portland tonight. We have a flight at 11:35 p.m. David looked up sharply. You're leaving? Today? I have to. Mark's been working with a lawyer for months, cutting off my access to good representation, building a case against me. If I don't get ahead of this now, I'll lose them. What can I do to help? The question surprised me. David, you don't need to. Yes, I do. He stood up, suddenly looking more determined than devastated. Emma destroyed our relationship, but she also helped your husband plan to steal your children. That's unforgivable. Lucy started fussing in her stroller, probably picking up on the tension radiating from both adults. I checked my phone, 12:23 p.m. Tyler's preschool dismissed at 3 p.m., and our flight was in 11 hours. Actually, I said slowly, there might be something. David leaned forward. Mark doesn't know I found their messages. If Emma's been calling you all morning, she's probably desperate to do damage control before he finds out I know. What if we used that against them? How? I looked at David, this decent man whose life had been shattered by the same two people who destroyed mine, and made a decision that would either save my children or ruin everything. What if you agree to meet with Emma this afternoon? Let her think she can still salvage this? David's expression shifted from confusion to something that looked almost predatory. While you disappear with the kids. Exactly. David's plan was elegant in its simplicity. He would text Emma agreeing to meet at 4 p.m. at their favorite coffee shop downtown, Grind Coffee, the place where he proposed to her 6 months ago. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. He'd tell her he was willing to listen, that maybe we could work through this misunderstanding together. Meanwhile, I'd pick up Tyler from preschool at 3 p.m. as usual, drive straight home to grab our packed suitcases, and head to Albany International Airport. By the time Emma realized David wasn't coming to forgive her, we'd be boarding our flight to Portland. She'll try calling Mark the second she figures out it's a setup, David warned, checking his watch. You'll have maybe 30 minutes once she realizes I'm not showing up. That's all I need. But as I drove home from the park, my phone started ringing. Mark's name flashed on the screen, and my blood turned to ice. It was only 12:45 p.m. He never called during work hours unless there was an emergency. I let it go to voicemail. 30 seconds later, he called again. This time I answered, forcing my voice to sound normal. Hey, what's up? Sarah. Mark's voice was tight, controlled. I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. My heart hammered against my ribs. Okay. Did you take money out of our checking account this morning? The bank withdrawal. Of course they'd called him about an unusual transaction. Yes, I needed cash for Tyler's field trip next week and that new summer camp registration. The lie came smoothly, but Mark didn't sound convinced. $950 in cash? For a preschool field trip? $950? I'd only withdrawn $2,500. Unless he was testing me, seeing if I'd admit to the real amount. It wasn't $900, Mark. It was $200 for Tyler's stuff and I got cash back for groceries. I pulled into our driveway, mind racing. Why are you asking? Is something wrong with our account? The pause stretched too long. The bank flagged it as unusual activity. They wanted to confirm it was authorized. Well, it was. I'm your wife, remember? I'm allowed to access our money. Another pause. Right. Of course. Never mind. I'll call you later. He hung up before I could respond. I sat in my car, hands shaking as the pieces clicked into place. Mark wasn't calling about a bank alert. Emma had already warned him. She'd probably called him the second she found my envelope, which meant they'd been coordinating damage control for over 3 hours. The bank withdrawal was just Mark's way of confirming his suspicions, and I'd walked right into his test by lying about the amount. I grabbed Lucy from her car seat and ran into the house, no longer caring about maintaining normal appearances. Our suitcases were exactly where I'd hidden them, but as I dragged them toward the front door, I noticed something that made my stomach plummet. Mark's secret phone was sitting on our kitchen counter. The phone that was supposed to be hidden under his truck seat was now displayed openly in our house, its screen dark but somehow menacing in the afternoon light streaming through our windows. Which meant Mark had been home. Which meant he'd seen the suitcases before I moved them. Which meant this had all been a trap, and I'd walked directly into it. Lucy started crying in her bouncer, probably sensing my panic, and I realized with crystal clarity that my carefully planned escape had just become something much more dangerous. Mark knew everything. And he was already 3 steps ahead of me. My phone buzzed with a text message. Mark's name on the screen made my hands shake so badly I almost dropped the device. Asterisk, I'm coming home early today. We need to talk. Don't go anywhere. Asterisk. The message had been sent 12 minutes ago. If Mark had left his job site in Colony when he sent it, he'd be pulling into our driveway in less than 10 minutes. I looked at Lucy crying in her bouncer, at the 3 suitcases sitting by our front door like evidence of my failed escape attempt, at Mark's secret phone taunting me from the kitchen counter. Everything I'd planned so carefully was crumbling, but Tyler was still at preschool and our flight to Portland was still 7 hours away. I could salvage this. I had to. First, I moved our suitcases back to their hiding spots in my closet, working as quickly as possible while Lucy's cries grew more desperate. Then I scooped her up, bouncing her gently while I tried to think. The secret phone was the key. Mark had left it out deliberately, either to test whether I'd touch it, or because he wanted me to know that he knew. Either way, I couldn't let him think I was intimidated. At 1:47 p.m., Mark's truck turned into our driveway. I was sitting on our living room couch, nursing Lucy, and watching afternoon talk shows like any normal Tuesday. The perfect picture of domestic tranquility, if you ignored the way my heart was hammering against my ribs. Mark walked through our front door carrying a bouquet of grocery store flowers, yellow daisies, my favorites from when we were dating. The gesture would have been sweet if I didn't know it was psychological warfare. Hey babe, he said, kissing the top of my head before settling into his recliner. Thought we could use some brightness in here. They're beautiful. What's the occasion? Mark's smile didn't reach his eyes. Can't a husband buy his wife flowers just because? We sat in silence for several minutes, the tension thick enough to cut. Mark kept glancing toward the kitchen, obviously waiting for me to notice his phone. When I didn't react, he finally spoke. Sarah, I need to tell you something, and I want you to hear it from me first. Here it comes, I thought. The confession, the manipulation, the attempt to control the narrative. Emma called me this morning, very upset. She thinks someone's been spreading lies about her and David. Apparently someone sent him some kind of fake text messages, trying to break them up. The audacity was breathtaking. They were going to claim the screenshots were fabricated. That's awful, I said, adjusting Lucy's position. Who would do something like that? We don't know yet. But Sarah. Mark leaned forward, his voice taking on that concerned tone he used when he wanted me to feel guilty. Emma's worried it might be connected to those questions you've been asking lately. About my work phone, my schedule, the credit card charges. What are you saying? I'm not saying anything. But David's pretty upset, and if he goes to the police about harassment. Mark shrugged helplessly. They're going to look at who had access to Emma's personal information. Who might have had reasons to want to break up their engagement. The setup was masterful. They were positioning me as the unstable sister-in-law who'd fabricated evidence out of jealousy or mental illness. Any attempt I made to prove the messages were real would just reinforce their narrative that I was obsessed with destroying Emma's relationship. Mark, are you suggesting I sent fake messages to David? Of course not, babe. I know you'd never do anything like that. But his eyes told a different story. I'm just saying we should be prepared for questions. And maybe you should think about talking to someone. Professional help. You've been so stressed lately with the kids and everything. Professional help. Another piece of evidence for their custody case, the mentally unstable mother who needed psychiatric intervention. Lucy finished nursing and I lifted her to my shoulder, using the movement to check the time on my phone. 2:23 p.m. Tyler's preschool dismissal was in 37 minutes. I should go pick up Tyler soon, I said casually. Actually, I was thinking I'd get him today. Give you some time to rest, maybe call Emma and sort out this whole mess with David. Mark wanted to control Tyler's pickup. He wanted me isolated at home, probably so Emma could come over for some kind of confrontation where they'd both witness my unstable behavior for their lawyers. That's sweet, but Tyler's expecting me. It's library day, he picked out books he wants to show me. Mark's jaw tightened slightly. I'm sure he'd be just as excited to show me. Of course, but I promised him I'd be there. You know how upset he gets when routines change unexpectedly. For several seconds, we stared at each other across our living room, this space where we'd brought Tyler home as a newborn, where we'd celebrated birthdays and anniversaries, where I thought we were building a life together. Now it felt like a battlefield, each word a careful strategic move. Fine, Mark said finally. But I'm coming with you. Family time, right? No. If Mark came to preschool pickup, I'd have no opportunity to deviate from our normal routine. No chance to grab our suitcases and head straight to the airport. But if I protested too much, he'd know I was planning something. That sounds nice, I lied, my mind frantically recalculating. Tyler will love seeing you there. Mark smiled, but his eyes remained cold and watchful. We were both still playing our roles, pretending this was a normal conversation between loving spouses. But underneath the performance, we were circling each other like predators, each waiting for the other to make a fatal mistake. The difference was, Mark thought he'd already won. He had no idea I was still holding the most dangerous card of all. At 2:47 p.m., my phone buzzed with a text from David. Emma's here early. She's panicking. Go now. Asterisk. Mark was in the bathroom, and I could hear the shower running. This was my only chance. I grabbed Lucy from her bouncer and our car keys, calling toward the bathroom. Tyler forgot his water bottle, running to get him early. Wait, I'll come with. Mark's voice was muffled by the shower door. But I was already out the door, Lucy in my arms, heart hammering as I loaded her into the car seat. Mark's secret phone was still on the kitchen counter, and suddenly I realized why he'd left it there. He wanted me to run. He wanted evidence of my erratic behavior for the custody hearing. But what Mark didn't know was that I'd already sent copies of every message to my real lawyer, Rebecca Morrison in Albany, who I'd secretly retained last week using Emma's name. The same Emma who was now at Grind Coffee, desperately trying to convince David that her affair with my husband was just a misunderstanding. I pulled into Little Sunshine Preschool at exactly 3 p.m. Tyler ran toward me with his usual enthusiasm, clutching a book about dinosaurs and chattering about his day. For a moment, looking at his innocent excitement, I wavered. Was I really going to uproot his entire life based on text messages and paranoid suspicions? Then my phone rang. Mark's name flashed on the screen. Where are you? His voice was sharp now, the pretense finally dropped. Getting Tyler, like I told you. Sarah, I know about the suitcases. I know about the bank withdrawals. I know about Portland. My blood turned to ice. Mark, I don't know what. Emma told me everything. About your paranoid accusations, about you threatening David, about your plan to kidnap my children and disappear across the country. Tyler was buckled into his car seat, still talking about dinosaurs, completely oblivious to the fact that his world was about to change forever. They're not your children to take, I said quietly, surprised by how calm my voice sounded. They're our children. And I'm not kidnapping them, I'm protecting them from a father who thinks custody battles are games to be won. Sarah, you're not thinking clearly. Come home. We can work this out. I pulled out of the preschool parking lot, but instead of turning toward our house, I headed toward the highway. Actually, Mark, I've never been thinking more clearly. See, while you've been planning your perfect little custody strategy with Emma and your lawyer friend Patterson, I've been planning too. The silence stretched for 10 seconds. What are you talking about? I'm talking about Rebecca Morrison, who's been my real attorney for 8 days. I'm talking about the emergency custody hearing scheduled for tomorrow morning, where Judge Martinez gets to see every text message between you and my sister. I'm talking about the envelope that was delivered to Jim Hartwell at Hartwell Construction this morning, and another one that should be arriving at your parents' house right about now. Tyler had fallen asleep in his car seat, exhausted from preschool. Lucy was babbling happily to herself, playing with her stuffed elephant. But mostly, Mark, I'm talking about the fact that while you thought you were 10 steps ahead of your stupid, paranoid wife, you were actually documenting your entire plan to destroy our family in writing. Every custody strategy, every lie about my mental health, every detail about your affair, it's all there in black and white, ready to be presented to a judge who really doesn't like it when parents use children as weapons. I could hear Mark breathing heavily into the phone. Sarah, please. Come home. We can fix this. We could have fixed it 6 months ago, before you decided I was too boring to love and too stupid to notice. Now the only thing getting fixed is my children's future, without a father who thinks they're just prizes to be won. I hung up and turned off my phone. 3 hours later, Tyler and Lucy and I were on United Flight 847 to Portland, watching Mark's perfectly orchestrated plan crumble from 30,000 feet above the country we were crossing to start our new life. Sometimes the wife who seems oblivious is actually the one holding all the cards. She's just waiting for the perfect moment to play them.